This is Tony Kent, and this is episode 7 of Tony Kent Writes and Chats. It's the 7th of April. When we left yesterday, we had been speaking about the process of writing, how I personally go about writing a book over the course of any given day. And one of the things I was explaining was that yesterday was a structural day. Well, not even a structural day really, a foundation day. I explained that certainly for me, because I like my books to be fast, I like to try to keep them gripping, and I use the metaphor of a roller coaster and go back to it. When I'm first writing the first few chapters after the introduction, after we've had our initial spectacle, I need to put together the foundations, the structure, the steel of the roller coaster. And that's what I was doing yesterday. And frankly, that's what I was doing again today. Now, I have no intention of telling you what the book's about at any point during this period, because frankly, you might not want to buy it, and why would I be writing it? But I have to tell you, the process we're going through, and we're documenting that. But to tell you the same thing today that I told you yesterday, well, that will be dull. And so I think we'll find a new subject. And at the end of the recording yesterday, I asked you whether or not you would start using the comment section on YouTube to see if we can make this interactive. Well, that's happened really quickly, and it's given me something new to talk about today. Michael McDevitt wrote to me on YouTube, and he said, "Hi Tony, just finished Marked for Death, about to start Power Play. Great writing, especially the courtroom scenes." He then goes on to say, "Appreciated your Mason Cross support as well, as his Carter Blake series is superb and deserves greater recognition." Yes, it is, and yes, it does. So, Michael, we're in full agreement. However, you've raised the subject of the courtroom scenes, and so I thought it might be helpful to talk about that today. And again, we'll keep it brief, but we'll talk about that today, I think. Now, I think I've mentioned before, I am a full-time criminal barrister. I've been doing that for nearly 20 years. I have prosecuted and defended in a vast array of every kind of offence you could speak of. I started out small, as we all do. We start out in the magistrate's court. Now I generally defend in murders, conspiracy to murders, conspiracy to import large amounts of Class A drugs, anything serious really. I specialise in very serious crime. I spend quite a lot of time in the Old Bailey and in the other major courtrooms around the country, the major Crown Courts. Now, when someone does what I do, then there is a bit of an obligation when writing court scenes to get them right, to get them as close to right as possible. For two reasons really. First of all, it drives me mad when I watch a TV show or read a book and they get the court scenes wrong. No one can get them completely accurate, because otherwise our books will be 1,700 pages long and really boring. So you have to speed things up, you have to condense what goes on. But there are other things that other books just don't need to get wrong, that TV shows just don't need to get wrong. I'm not saying all books do it, many of them don't. I mean, you've only got to look at the books of Steve Kavanagh, for example. Just exceptional books. I don't know how that man keeps coming up with the plots that he keeps coming up with. We'll definitely return to him in my recommend series. So I'm not saying all writers do it, but some do. And TV is particularly bad for it. So that angers me. I don't like it when people get things wrong just because they didn't bother doing their research. And there is another reason, and it's probably even more compelling, which is that barristers are sharks. All of my friends, most of my friends are barristers. It's one of those jobs where you kind of live in each other's pockets, and it affects your social circle, which drives my non-barrister wife crazy. And the reality is, if I got things horribly wrong in my courtroom scenes, they would never let me live it down. It would be absolutely on my back day in, day out. So how did I ensure that my courtroom scenes were accurate? Well, what I did was I took there are three cross-examinations in Marked for Death, which of all my books is the real legal thriller. There are three cross-examinations, and for those of you who've read Marked for Death or who will now read Marked for Death, every single one of them happened. I took cross-examinations that I had carried out, and I then chose the three ones that I thought went really well. I'm sure I've had a lot of disastrous ones. These ones went really well. And I built a case around them. I built the case that is the trial in Marked for Death around these cross-examinations, so that although each one of them actually in reality came from a different case to each other, they would all apply to this one case to prove a point that Michael Devlin was trying to make. I had to condense them again. They're quite long. chapters, in fact. But again, they had to be condensed because if they were real, they'd be book length, each of them. I had to take out some of the technicality, especially in relation to the cell sites. But I can guarantee you that they are all accurate. There's nothing in there that wouldn't happen. And in fact, there's nothing in there that didn't happen. And I'm quite proud of that, because that book has now been read by several of the top QCs in the country. I gave a copy just in January, in fact, to my judge in a murder trial in the Old Bailey, who was the Common Sergeant of London, so the senior Crown Court judge in the country at that point, to take away on his holiday. And from the QCs, from the Common Sergeant, from all of them, I've not had any criticism yet. And as I say, barristers would love to criticise. So it's worked for me. It has worked for me in that respect. Although in fairness, I've only written one legal thriller. There is a courtroom scene in Killer Intent, but there's a whole other story about that. And I will tell you about that when we talk about editing, because it's an editing story. And there aren't many funny editing stories. Most editing stories are sort of try to restrain yourself stories. So we'll make sure we reserve that one for then. But yes, courtroom scenes. That's how I've written them. That's how I've got them right. I've done it by just taking what really happened and jazzing it up a bit. Okay, that's today. Good workout today, just so you know, in terms of book 4, far double the words of yesterday. Yesterday I managed 2,000 words, which wasn't a lot for me. Today, 4,000. So we're on track, we're moving along, and there'll be an update tomorrow. Thanks.